Welcome everyone to this, our very first education and introduction session for the Dorothy Stang Initiative Plastics Task Force. It's one of the three focus that the sisters gave us last June at the assembly. So we spent our year planning, and now we're in our implementation phases. So we're very excited to get started on our actual actions for the Dorothy Stang Initiative, and we're excited to bring you along with us as well. So I'm going to start, we thought we'd start with a very simple prayer today in honor of our great sister Dorothy Stang, who our initiative is named after. And I'm just going to use the one off of the prayer card that we had handed out at her prayer service last week. So if we would just take a minute and kind of take a deep breath. I need a deep breath to calm myself down. And just remember that we're in the presence of God always, and that thankfully we are under the, hopefully, the patronage of our wonderful sister Dorothy Stang. So in those thoughts, perhaps we could just listen to the words of this prayer on her prayer card. Let us pray in the spirit of Sister Dorothy's discipleship, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy Creator, source of all that is, remembering the life and death of your daughter, Sister Dorothy, we ask for healing. Healing of greed and injustice, healing of our devastated earth, healing of hearts that know the pain of poverty and oppression. You are the source of our hope and our joy. You are our good and loving God. Amen.
Amen.
I do, every time I do a Zoom, I always forget to introduce myself. I just assume everyone knows me, I guess. I don't know. I'm Teresa Phillips. I'm the director of the Justice, Peace, and Care for Creation office here at the Ohio province of the Sisters of Notre Dame Dana Moore. And I have been given the task of getting the Dorothy Stang Initiative running with the amazing sisters and associates who have joined in this journey with us. Today, we are very excited to have with us a speaker who is a member of the Speakers Bureau for Beyond Plastics. The more that the Plastics Task Force did research into recycling and all the great things we can do to recycle and those sorts of things, the more we realize that we'll never recycle our way out of the plastics problem, and that we need to have an alternative solution. And Liz Boyer did some research and found this organization called Beyond Plastics. Beyond Plastics, their whole goal is to end the single-use plastics, people using single-use plastics, from individual use, also on the side of advocacy, advocating with lawmakers, advocating with corporations, to have people realize the damage that plastics is doing to our earth. So I'm going to introduce Kim Cameron. She is the member of the Speakers Bureau for Beyond Plastic. Kim has a PhD in plant physiology and has taught biology courses in SUNY, New York, or SNUI in Cortland, upstate New York, I believe. She worked as a research scientist at Cornell University, and now has a tutoring organization, helping students in high schools and college to obtain their educational goals. Kim is very actively engaged in her community, serving on the Climate Smart Community Committee, the Thule Free Library Board, and the Song Lake Property Owners Association. She's an environmentalist, a parent, and a grandparent. She's passionate about educating communities about climate change and the significant threat of plastics in our environment. So thank you very much, Kim, for being with us here today, and we are all ears.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. So how about if we just pull up my talk and we'll just get going here. So I have share screen, pull it up. There we go. All right. It's very, very nice to be here. Thank you all for inviting me to talk. I am a representative of Beyond Plastics, which is an organization which was founded by Judith Enck, who is an environmental activist. She was the EPA administrator for Region 2 under President Obama. And now she has taken this organization Beyond Plastic into a national organization. So as we get going here, I myself, you might ask, why am I here? And I think it is a little bit like Teresa was saying, I started out with recycling and how do we recycle better? But I came to realize that we were underestimating how much plastic there is in our environment and how detrimental it is to our environment. So I want to share that information with you. And that is kind of what drives me. There's probably something else that might drive me even more than that. And that might be that I have 2 young grandchildren, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I'll do just about anything for my grandchildren, including some crazy stuff like walking around pretending to be the plastic lady at a community event. But on a more serious note, I think a lot about the next generation these days, and I'm very concerned about what is happening to our environment. So in 1958, when I was born, there was very little plastic in our environment. And you can see that in this graph right here. There was very little plastic generated. Obviously, that means there was very little plastic. But look at what it's like when my grandchildren were born just a couple of years ago. It's a very, very different story. And there has been how quickly we have ramped up our plastic production is startling and very disturbing. What effect does this have? If there is one take-home message I have for you today that I'd like to leave with you, it is that plastic is a hazardous substance. So hundreds of chemicals leach out of plastic into our food and into our environment. And also when the plastic breaks down into smaller pieces, it pollutes our environment. So today, I kind of like to give people a roadmap of where we're going. We'll talk about the actual scope of this problem. And then we'll talk about the health effects of plastic waste, how plastic pollution is linked to climate change. You may not quite understand that yet, but hopefully by the time we finish, you will. And we'll go to a lighter level after that of how do we get out of this mess and how can you get involved. We'll start with the actual scope. The actual scope of this problem is really large, and this is our reality now. But here in America, I think most of this is hidden from us. We don't see the beaches littered with plastic. We don't see the plastic bound together in bales to be shipped somewhere else. But that doesn't mean it isn't there. The truth is 8 to 15 million tons of plastic enter our oceans every year. And by 2025, which is only a couple of years from now, it is anticipated for every 3 pounds of fish, there will be 1 pound of plastic. And if we take that out a little bit further, by 2050, it's expected, if we continue at the rate we're going, that there will be 1 pound of plastic for every pound of fish in the ocean. But this is more like what we see. Nice, tidy rows of plastic in our grocery store. Or maybe this, plastic baby bottles, plastic toys, our children are actually exposed to a lot of plastic. Unfortunately, there is more to this story. Microplastics are particles that are smaller than 5 millimeters in size that derive from the degradation of the plastic, larger pieces of plastic. And I'm not talking about biodegradation. I'm not talking about plastic that organisms can digest. I'm just talking about small pieces of plastic. Eventually, plastic grinds down into tinier and tinier fragments. First, microplastics, which are kind of the size of about a grain of sand, down to nanoplastics, which can be a fraction of the size of a blood cell. Really, really tiny. They are everywhere. And they are so small that they can get caught up in the wind. They can get taken up with water into our clouds, and then they can be moved all over the world, and they rain down everywhere on our earth. Microplastics also interact with organisms in and around the soil. So you can see in the top left corner an image that just arrived from the Adirondack State Park in New York of insects which are literally covered with microplastics. In many places, treated sewer sludge is used as fertilizer. That sludge has a plastic that we ourselves kind of pooped out. Even though that sludge has been treated to kill any nasty things like microorganisms, but there is no way to remove the microplastic. So it ends up being spread on our fields and ends up getting into our food system. This picture that you see on the right there is a picture of a root cell, and you can see that red thing is a plastic filament that has gotten stuck in the xylem of the plant. And the xylem are special cells that transport water throughout the entire plant. So you can imagine if we clog up those cells, then the plant can't grow properly. On the left-hand side, in the bottom there, you see a little purple microfilament that has gotten caught up in a snowflake. These are what are shed off of our synthetic clothing. They're shed by fleeces, sportswear, that type of thing. And, just take a second and look at yourself in your own clothes and ask yourself, do I have plastic particles that I'm shedding right now as we're sitting here talking to each other? Probably we are. It turns out we also ingest a lot of plastic as well, on average about 5 grams per week. That's about a credit card's worth of plastic. We've been talking about how tiny these particles are. Imagine how many of them would be needed to add up to the weight of a credit card. They are in our drinking water, especially in our bottled water. They're in our air, they're in our food. And unfortunately, sadly, we've just discovered that they also pass through the human placenta and have been found in fetuses at birth. So plastics are in our bodies, but what does that actually mean? Obviously, we're not going to eat plastic knowingly, but what about those tiny micro and nanoplastics? Well, the truth is we don't know. We only know it is there, but what it is doing in our bodies, we're not 100% sure right now. So it's probably time for a little relax just for a second. Take a little bit of a step back. Imagine 2 young fish swimming in one direction, and mama fish comes along and asks the boys, how's the water today? And mama fish goes by, and the boys look at each other and they go, what the heck is water? And that might be kind of where we are when it comes to plastic. We're kind of swimming in this stuff and we don't even realize it. So hopefully I've accomplished my goal of showing you kind of the scope of this problem. Let's talk about some of the known health effects of plastic waste and the effects of plastic pollution. So first, we need to understand a little bit about how plastic is made. And I apologize, but I am a biochemist to some extent, so you're going to get a little bit of chemistry here. But monomers, which are just organic chemicals, are bound together chemically to form a long chain called a polymer. In this case, you see styrene, which is polymerized to make polystyrene. Then these polymers have to actually be joined together, and they're usually joined together chemically into long, yeah, I would just say chemically joined together, but also there are additives which are shoved in between these polymers that are just wedged in there. So these additives are mixed with the polymers to make the plastic, the characteristics of plastic that we know today, like plasticizers, which make it flexible, flame retardants to make sure that your baby's toys don't burn up, antioxidants, light and heat stabilizers. All of these things are designed to reduce the breakdown due to UV light and wind and water. There are a ton of these additives. But unfortunately, that plastic degrades. And as it degrades, those chemicals are released to the environment. And unfortunately, not only do we have these chemicals being released to the environment, the ones that were just shoved in there, wedged between the polymers, but also we break down into smaller and smaller pieces, and chemical toxins bind to these smaller and smaller pieces. Nasty molecules like heavy metals. And we see that here. So with our plastic debris, we have a cocktail of chemical contaminants, not only the particles that break down, but also things that adhere to the plastic itself. So not only did this albatross ingest plastic, but it also ingested any of the chemicals that were bound or associated with that plastic. Many of those chemicals mimic hormones in our bodies, and this is a real problem. We call them endocrine disruptors. So your endocrine disruptors trick the body into thinking they are hormones. Hormones normally bind to a receptor on the outside of a cell, and then that creates a response. But if the endocrine disruptor binds instead, the hormone can't function the way it's supposed to. And hormones affect necessary systems all over our bodies. And these endocrine disrupting chemicals are involved with all sorts of cancers, reproductive problems like early puberty, hormonal problems, you name it. There's a litany of things. But it is very difficult to pinpoint which compound causes which problem. Sometimes problems don't arise for many years, and so it's almost impossible to link a specific chemical to an outcome. And not only that, banning a chemical is also extremely difficult. So while, for instance, while the EPA discourages the use of BPA in plastic bottles, only 5 states have actually banned BPA. So what does it all mean? We are ingesting these plastic particles, and we are being exposed to these endocrine disrupting molecules, as well as the heavy metals and other pollutants that bind to the plastic polymers. but we really don't know the biological effects of this plastic pollution. We have some correlations, but we really don't have any strong laws right now. Okay, so it's probably time to take a deep breath. And just imagine yourself walking down this lovely pathway through the forest, or maybe kayaking or canoeing on a lake. And think to yourself, it's probably better to know what's going on than to not to know. So after a deep breath, we'll change gears in just a sec, but just calm down. We can deal with this. It's a lot that I'm presenting and it's unpleasant. But let's turn our attention to how plastic pollution is linked to climate change. So plastics are made from chemicals and fossil fuels. We've talked about some of those chemicals, and let's talk about the fossil fuels: coal, oil, natural gas. Today, most plastics are made from a byproduct of fracked gas called ethane. Fracking, unfortunately, has made it much cheaper to produce plastic. Ethane used to be a byproduct that was simply burned off, but now it's being repurposed to produce plastics. And this is what we call an ethane cracker plant. This is located near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on the Ohio River. This plant actually just started 100% operation in November of 2022. And this is a facility that makes plastic. They take that ethane and they heat it up to very high temperatures, about 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is a temperature high enough to crack or break the ethane and turn it into ethylene, which is the backbone for most plastics. This cracker facility is allowed to emit 2.2 million tons of carbon dioxide annually. And in order to absorb that, we would have to use 2.6 million acres of forest land to absorb that amount of carbon dioxide. It's going to produce 1.6 million metric tons of plastic pellets annually. And of course, these cracker facilities, not surprisingly, also emit other kinds of pollutants to the environment: benzene, fluorine, formaldehyde, you name it. So, how are plastic and climate change connected? Well, if plastic were a country, it would be the world's 5th largest greenhouse gas emitter. You make plastic, you release carbon dioxide. It's basically that simple. And we know what happens. More carbon dioxide raises our temperature on Earth, and that is climate change in a nutshell. So the final product from the cracker facility are nurdles, pre-production plastic pellets. These are what nurdles look like. What's inside that fish right there? Unfortunately, fish can't necessarily tell the difference between nurdles and their food source. And they're not, of course, the only organism that can't tell the difference. Those nurdles from a cracker facility have to be transported to someplace else to be made into the plastic products that we all know so well, right? And this particular picture was taken near where a ship sank, which was carrying nurdles, and all the nurdles were spilled into the ocean. And just think about transporting those nurdles. From what I understand, it's a little bit like transporting sand. They are slippery, They are small and they are lightweight. They literally end up everywhere. At the cracker facility in Beaver County that we just saw, environmental activists go out every single day onto the Ohio River looking for these nurdles. Here's the problem. The plastic manufacturing is utilizing the inexpensive ethane from the fracking boom to provide a new revenue source for oil and gas. The overproduction of plastic is driven by manufacturers, not market demand. As the economy moves away from its reliance on oil and gas for fuel and transportation and electricity, then the plan B is to use this material to make plastic. Billions of dollars are being invested in building or expanding 325 plants by 2025 and will put out 50 million tons of new plastic in the next 10 years. That's what the estimate is. 1.6 million of those tons are going to come from the cracker facility in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. The American Chemical Council is hard at work trying to make us all feel good about this plastic. To give you an idea, I want to touch on some of the false solutions to the plastic pollution crisis that are coming from the industry. Most false solutions include some form of incinerating the plastic. You've probably heard about some of these, like waste to fuel. Simply send us your waste. We're going to burn it. We're going to incinerate it. We're going to use that energy to power or to light up 20,000 houses with electricity. Unfortunately, this is not a solution. When we burn that plastic, we are releasing carbon dioxide and chemicals into the environment. Another false solution is recycling, as Teresa mentioned in the very beginning. Unfortunately, we cannot recycle our way out of this mess. There is just too much plastic. The bathtub is overfull, and recycling is like using a teaspoon to try to stop it. Too much is coming in, and we can't get it out fast enough. Another item used by corporations are promises. Many companies have done voluntary pledges, but they've got a long way to go. These corporate pledges that you see in red here, that's what they pledged. And unfortunately, the blue is what is actually happening. Johnson probably is the closest to coming to meeting their goals that they've set, but the rest of them are a long, long way away. These false solutions undermine waste reduction efforts and distract society from pursuing the only truly effective solution to the plastic pollution crisis, which is quite simply to stop plastic pollution, stop making plastic. And I'll correct that slightly and say stop making single-use plastic, because we can't stop making plastic and we need some of the plastic we make, so we talk about stopping single-use plastic. We'll never know how much plastic we have produced so far, but scientists have made a ballpark estimate. More than 18 trillion pounds on Earth. That is twice the weight of all animals living on Earth. Of that, 14 trillion pounds have become waste. Only best 9% has been recycled. 12% has probably been incinerated, and a whopping 89% has either been landfilled or released to the environment. So, all is not lost. Okay, how do we get out of this mess? And I would say we are slowly but surely changing attitudes about our climate, and we are well on our way to producing renewable energy at much cheaper cost than fossil fuels, especially if we take environmental issues into account. We can do the same with plastics. We can raise awareness and concern. We can educate both our community members and our legislators. You know, for starters, good things are happening. You guys are here, right? And this is so, so important. We are obviously getting the word out because you're here. And we can't make the move away from plastics without each and every one of you. What else are good news? Bans are here. Plastic straw bans are happening. Styrofoam has just been banned in New York. These bans are happening. Plastic bags are a slightly different story. It's a little rocky, that story. In that picture on the left-hand side down here, anything that's in green, the states that are in green have completely banned plastic bags. But unfortunately, the states in yellow, where you guys are, have preemption laws, which means you have to ban them at the state level. You can't ban at the local or municipal level. So you have a higher mountain to climb, but it is a really worthy cause. Not only that, more and more people are aware that zero waste economy policies work. They produce more jobs. We're talking about an economy that focuses on redesigning things, reducing and reusing products. So for instance, if we incinerate 10,000 tons of waste, put it in the landfill or incinerate it, we probably produce 2 jobs. But if we recycle some of that material, as you see in this picture, we might produce 115 jobs. And if we repair some of that material, we can produce even more jobs. So people have understand this zero waste economy. Not only that, we're making some laws. Laws are making headways. It takes a long time to make a law. We've got a ways to go, but here are 2 promising laws: Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act and the Plastic Pellet Free Waters Act. There are lots other laws that we're trying to get enacted. Many of these laws most of them are introduced by Democrats, but Republicans are also producing laws, or producing bills, I should say. And this should not be a bipartisan issue. So, this should not be a partisan issue. It should be a bipartisan issue. So, and the best laws are usually bipartisan. Unfortunately, all of these bills, none of them are actually laws yet. They are all pending. One of our favorite types of bills at Beyond Plastic are the group of bills known as extended producer responsibility bills. These bills, if written well, puts a responsibility on the producer to deal with the pollution associated with their packaging. This is a great example of an effort to achieve a zero waste economy. Unfortunately, we're working really hard. We have 4 states which have adopted new bills or new laws, and 16 states which have introduced legislation. So hopefully I have given you some hope here. There are ways to go. But how can you get involved? we invite you to get involved in our war on single-use plastic. We need your help. We need to join forces to address plastic pollution. There is so much to do. We need to inform our legislators. We need to help people understand the role plastic plays in their lives. And we need to embrace the concept that everyone has the right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. Change is never easy, but it is what our country is built on. Our history is the history of striving for the betterment of all, towards equality for all. I didn't say that we've succeeded. I'm simply saying we've been working on it since we signed the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, lots of twists and turns along the way, but if we kind of squash everything down, we're still moving in the same direction, in one direction. And this is simply a continuation of that movement. This is an example. These are all of the affiliates and organizations of the Beyond Plastic organizations around the United States. Anything in red are affiliates. So they have another organization, but they have affiliated with Beyond Plastic. And the ones in blue are actual Beyond Plastic, and that's all they do, association. But this map changes on a weekly basis. So our effort is making a difference. Other ways you can get involved: Beyond Plastic mailing list, advocacy training, start your own group, do whatever. And I'd say thank you for listening. And my grandchildren, thank you as well. And if you want to learn more, go to beyondplastics.org. That's it.
Thank you, Kim, so much. So if you wouldn't mind staying around for a little bit, Kim, we're going to have a short, if anybody has questions for you or for me.
Absolutely happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Great. So I see any hands go up, let me know, and you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. It looks like Kathy Harmon has a question there.
Yes, Kim, I would like to ask, under the false solutions sheet, you also had compostable materials. Can you speak a little bit, like we're trying to buy compostable plates and things, but I think we need more information about that. And can you please share the information?
So yes, there is a lot of information on Beyond Plastics on that, but most compostable materials is only compostable at very, very high levels of heat and other things. So they're not compostable like you can put them in your compost pile and expect them to compost in your backyard.
Thank you. Thank
so
you.
That's the problem. You know, it would be nice to think that they were compostable in our backyard. Most of them are not.
Thank you.
Regina Bajorek has a question.
Yeah. We have been fairly active in recycling, but part of that has been, like you said, we've noticed that we pay a lot of attention to packaging, and there is a place, a hub now that recycles a lot of things that Cincinnati hasn't recycled in the past. But something that concerns me, besides trying to reduce that, is number one, packaging, the plastic clamshells. They are so abundant, but yet everybody says they're just garbage. You can't do anything with them.
Yep.
So I take mesh bags with me, but lots of places they're already bundled in the number one plastic shells. So I haven't ever tried, but I don't think I could open it and dump my food in and then buy it.
I know.
Do you have any suggestions?
The only suggestion I have is to actively contact your grocery stores, let them know how you feel. That it's not okay to put everything in plastic. And honestly, COVID accelerated this movement to putting everything in plastic. So
Thank
but the answer is no. I have to throw them away in my area as well. There's nothing I can do with them. I try
Something,
to now go to other grocery stores that don't require that. So I go to farm stands more. I stay away from my major grocery store as much as I can for that type of thing.
something I have done that I feel like maybe it's a little better, but it's not a lot better, is to buy a large bag of frozen strawberries. So you're not getting the fresh strawberries, but at least you're getting the strawberries in it's one plastic bag, which can be sent to Kroger's. Kroger's takes a large variety of plastic bags supposedly for recycling, but I don't know what really happens to those bags.
That's kind of the golden question, what really happens to the plastic? And sometimes you don't even know if the groups that are really putting a lot of heart and soul into plastic recycling, you don't even know if they know where it actually ends up.
At one point, I was told on the phone by a Kroger employee that the plastics were given to groups of people who made the plastic mats for homeless people. I don't know how I feel about that.
Right. Unfortunately, we're just producing more and more plastic,
Right.
and the homeless, we don't have that many homeless people who are making plastic mats. Yeah, so it's a good question where it's all going. In my area, we have an incinerator, and a lot of it is ending up in an incinerator. And it's being burned, and they actually tout it as being a great thing. If you don't know what to do with your garbage, just put it, if you don't know if it's recyclable, just put it in the trash. It's no problem, because we're just gonna burn it and we're gonna heat homes with it.
And create all kinds of noxious gas with it.
Correct.
Thank you.
People who live nearby.
Other questions?
Oh dear.
Okay, that I don't see hands, so if you do, just unmute. Kathy, you have another one? Kathy Harmon?
What I'm appreciating and hearing, Kim, thank you very much, is the primary work I think we need to do is change our attitude and do the systemic political work to quit creating the plastics. It's a harder job, but it's the only solution. And that's political work, and it's systemic change. And I need to do it by looking at my own attitudes and values. But it's not enough just that I do recycle things that I use. I must contribute to the political systemic change of not producing so much plastic that's thrown away. We have to quit doing it.
And I don't think you should put that much, let's see, how do I say this? The recycling idea has put the responsibility on you and I to fix the plastic problem. And
Yes.
the plastic problem isn't us. We didn't create that plastic.
Mhm.
The plastic problem is coming from the oil and gas industry who are making the plastic. As I said, this is not based on market demand. You aren't going there and shouting and saying, give me plastic. All of a sudden, plastic is appearing on your shelves where it never appeared before. And that's the difference. So I agree with you. I think it has to be legislative. It has to be shouting a different way. And it's got to be educating people to understand that recycling is not the answer. Because we all were brought up to believe that if we just recycle better, it'll go away. It'll be no problem. But that's not true. And that's what we've been taught to believe.
Thank you, Kim.
Regina 6190. It's so dark, I can't see who that is. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Ask your question.
I understand the point. Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
I understand that point. However, there are some things that can be recycled, correct? That
Yes.
pliers around our house, those are still correct. Those are, right?
Yes.
And that is a meaningful occupation, even though time consuming and annoying and so forth.
Yeah, I was,
Absolutely.
go ahead, Kim, sorry.
Yes, some plastic can be recycled. And we do a great job in this country of recycling paper and aluminum and steel. We're some of the best in the world at recycling those things. So the problem with plastic is that it's very, very difficult to recycle because there's so many different types of plastic. And you can't just mix them all together and say, okay, we've got this mixture, it's just new plastic. Anything that had any chemical in it, which is not allowed to be exposed to food, for instance, then that can't be added to the mix of the recycled plastic. So that's why we have to separate our plastic into the ones and the twos. It's really so that you keep the same type of plastic together, but there are thousands of different types of plastic, and it's extremely difficult to do that separation.
And we're very lucky in Cincinnati. We have a nonprofit organization, the Recycling and Reuse Hub, that does that. You go and you put your 6s here and your 7s here and your 5s here and your 2s here and so it's fantastic. And so I would never say to people, stop recycling. It's definitely something we should continue to do, but with the knowledge that it's not the only thing we should be doing. And that the most important thing is that we try as much as we can to stop using it. It's that fish in the water thing. It's just around us everywhere. It's almost impossible to not use it, but where we can, we need to start making those choices, as well as, like Kim said, talk about the system and trying to address the system, which, yes, we are good at here.
Well, the point is it's manufactured because we will buy it.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to put a drinking glass in my bathroom. You know, I want a plastic thing in there, so we will buy it. I think that's what we have to look at. How can we buy things? I liked what the speaker said about using a farm stand, because we do eat blueberries. They're very healthy for you, especially as a cancer survivor. I'm very aware of the benefits of blueberries. So, but the only way I can buy them in Cincinnati is in a single-use plastic container. So I think we have to be very concrete about what we can do now that we're stuck on this. I think we can buy glass containers for storage in our refrigerators, but we can't truck things home from the grocery in glass containers safely without having glass shards all over it. So it's just a very complicated thing, and I think we have to be concrete about what we can do with the plastic. And I think we have to be better educators in terms of, you do things in your home, Teresa, that you've told me about, the type of, the substitute you have for saran wrap.
The beeswax wraps, yeah.
Where do you get that?
Just if you Google beeswax wrap, you get about 6 companies that make them. And then you can decide which company you like, which ones are, working with women in poverty or women in domestic abuse. And it's a, there's all kinds of great ones out there.
So things like that. It's a lot of trouble to cut the zipper off a little plastic bag.
You don't have to do that anymore, Marianne.
That changed.
Toss that zipper right in there. I just learned that the other day when I dropped things off at the hub. You don't have to cut the zippers off anymore. Okay, I'm just going to take one more question. Go ahead. Yes, sister.
Okay, I just want to offer 2 tiny things that I have been able to do. One is, now these may sound silly, but mustard most mustard comes in plastic containers, but there are brands that have glass containers. So I switched from plastic containers to the glass container. That's one thing. The other thing is, And I learned this from my nephew, who's big on this kind of thing. If we go to a restaurant, we always bring our own container for leftovers rather than the plastic stuff that they give you at the restaurant. So that's just two simple things that people can do. It's not, you're not going to conquer the world with it, but it's a little bit.
Mhm.
It's funny, I never forget my bags, my reusable bags anymore, but I always forget takeout, like when I go to a restaurant, I never remember to bring a container for anything. So just so that we don't run out of time for the action steps, which I think is a really important part of this conversation. I want to move on to that. If anybody has any other questions, you can either drop them in the chat or you can email me. And I will get them to Kim, or I will do the research for you to find out. But the Plastics Task Force has put some thought into what we could do as a group for advocacy, for action. And so I'm going to invite Pat Rooks to talk a little bit about an individual action that she's taken. And then Marie Remenko is going to talk about what we could do as a group and what we're planning as the task force to offer to the sisters and to associates and to anyone else who would like to join us. Because we are an affiliate. We are an affiliate with Beyond Plastics. We did that earlier in this year. So that little red dot on that map that Kim showed, that's us, that's you. So we are going to be doing those actions together. So Pat, would you like to start?
Okay. Here at the health center, we have been trying on a personal and group level to lower the use of plastics and to lower the size of our environmental footprint. One of the things we're very happy about is that in our laundry room right now, we have small disposable detergent packages that take the place of the large bottles, plastic bottles. Then something extra, I looked in our common supplies closet, and we have two options now for shower soap. We have the plastic Dove bottle, or we have the cardboard bar. Many of you probably do use the bar, but you can easily see which is the most environmentally sound choice. Thanks.
I switched to bars too, Pat. Same thing. In the box, so there's no plastic packaging around my bar even. Thank you. Marie?
All right, we are going to invite all of you to join in a group effort to work on the plastic bag ban. I contacted our state senator, Senator Blessing, to ask what kind of position would influence him to sponsor such a bill again. And I was told, we need to do the research and the advocacy with businesses in the area to get them to advocate for a plastic bag ban. So we're going to work on this step by step as a group. Get information about certain businesses that we can converse with, build up our arguments to influence them, and then thank God for Beyond Plastics. They have model bills, they have flyers with information. They've done a lot of work, so we don't have to do all of the thinking and researching. What we have to do is the organizing and the advocacy. Please join us.
So we're calling this, an action group. We're calling this an action group of the Plastics Task Force of the Dorothy Stang Initiative, which is part of the Laudato Si Action Plan from the Holy Father. So we're going straight from the Pope all the way down to our little action group. And we're inviting anyone who would be interested to join the action group, to strategize how we can build interest, to help figure out what kind of action we should take with area businesses and then statewide as well. And we're going to then have, what our plan is to have some kind of letters that you can sign and we can all send in together, or we can advocate with phone calls, or however we're going to strategize to do that. So that we can start here and then build as we go. As Kim mentioned, Ohio is a pre-exemption or preemptive, I think they call it, state. So we can't do anything. So there's a law in Ohio that says that individual cities and townships can't make their own law about this. So we either have to change that law or we have to do this on a statewide level. So that's our kind of goal. Now after hearing Kim speak, saying plastic bags might be the hardest one, but we've never shrunk from a challenge as a group. So I don't know why we would shrink from this one. So if you would be interested in being part of that action group, which we would more than love as many people as would like, you can either say so in the chat. So you can just drop it in the chat that you'd be interested in that. Or you can email me in any form of email that you know of my contact information. And then we can start those actions within the next couple of weeks. And hopefully we will have our first letter writing session before the end of Lent. We chose this date to have our Zoom because it's the Sunday before Lent starts. So Lent, Ash Wednesday is Wednesday, in case you didn't know. And we thought this would be a wonderful way to go through Lent, to maybe address some of our own personal actions, but also to enter into some advocacy work with lawmakers and with corporations. You know, Procter & Gamble is in our little town here in Cincinnati. So, we will be doing those kind of advocacy efforts with both state lawmakers and corporations. So we hope that you will consider this as part of your Lenten journey and beyond. Obviously, this is not going to be solved by Easter. I'm not that positive. But we want to have this as part of our ongoing addressing our climate issues and our climate concerns. So I think we've come to, according to my notes, I believe, and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I should probably say thank you. That would be really bad to forget that. So just to say thank you to Kim. Thank you for coming on today. I know you do this because it's a passion, but that education piece is so critical that we make sure we're educating folks as well as taking action. I was unaware until you said of it, or I didn't think about the kind of that nefarious connection between Plan A and Plan B of the fossil fuel industry. As we move to more green energy, how are they going to make their money now? So, so we want to keep that into and keep that education piece out there. I see we have one more question. Therese, did you want to say something? Oh, you're muted, dear. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Question, but it's a statement to rejoice in. Kenya has gotten rid of all plastic bags.
Wow.
I know.
That's huge in Kenya.
So when we go,
everything in plastic.
so when we go to the grocery store, if we don't bring our own bags, then they have these material bags in different colors. They're inexpensive and they are strong and they can be used over and over and over and over again. Plus, when you go to buy produce, instead of putting the lettuce and whatever in plastic bags like you do at Kroger's, they have brown paper bags that can then be weighed. So 3 cheers for Kenya. Not so much on the other things we burn, everything else, and send lots of carbon dioxide over to you, but we're trying.
It's very interesting to me to see the people that are banning plastic first are countries and states with coastlines, because it's so obvious when you have all of this stuff washing up on your beach that here kind of in Little Cincinnati, we don't see it as much, but when it's all washing up on the beach, it's very interesting to see when you look at the maps, who's doing all these things. Yeah. Thank you, Therese, for sharing that. And hi, it's good to see you. Okay, any other comments, questions before we end our Zoom? Yes, Joan. Don't forget to unmute yourself, dear.
I first want to thank you for inviting us to participate
Joan.
in this.
Nice.
Fest. And to do a writer first on what Trace said, there's another country in Africa that doesn't have a coastline that was the first to ban plastic bags. It was extremely effective because unfortunately it's a dictatorship. It's Rwanda.
Mm.
And they did it in a very harsh way, but it was effective. What I just would like to add in terms of our own experience of advocacy and using our purchasing power with our local suppliers, grocery stores, is the value of writing to a store and saying, we appreciate you have this when you find something that really is eco-friendly. And secondly, saying we are withdrawing our patronage because you do not use single-use packaging. And thirdly, when it's possible in that case, to suggest to them alternatives. And I say that because one of our stores, a sister wrote and complained. It was again in the produce department, and the store did reply saying, we also are concerned about this and we are trying to find an alternative. So now we have something to hold them to the line. So I think it's a wonderful way to bring to their awareness, we are aware and we're watching accountability. Thanks.
Thank you, Joan. That's so true. I really do believe we'll have the future that we demand. So we have to start demanding.
And Teresa, if I could add something,
Sure.
I think it's going to be important that we have a system for keeping us in the loop as things change. For example, cutting off the zipper that changed last week, you know, so to just keep us informed, because it is a rapidly changing picture as more and more people became aware of it. And we read things that are controversial, and we don't know where to go with it. So I think we need some kind of a central clearinghouse or some way, maybe in your weekly update. So, hey, this is new now. So that we expect it, and so that, well, also so that we have a quick channel for our questions. What about this?
Great suggestion, Marion. You're right, it does change. And sometimes I don't even, I think I'm like, not on the cutting edge, but I think I'm kind of up to date with things, and I'll find something out that has been that way for a year. And I think, how did I miss that? So if you're not if you don't, read or don't go to visit, how would anyone know if I didn't? It's kind of, I agree. Thank you so much for that reminder, Marianne. Regina Bajorek.
I was thinking about with plastics, there are so many different kinds of plastic containers, bags. I went to buy a box of cookies. Well, there were hardly any that were actually in cardboard boxes, but then the box itself, the cookies were in a plastic type bag inside. It seems like it would simplify things if there could at least be a list of what plastics are for what, and I don't know, simplify it by reducing the kind of plastics that are produced, if nothing else. If we can't get away from plastics, could we not at least control what type of plastic is being used?
Like through government regulations?
If that's what
my.
it takes.
Really, honey?
Kim, do you have anything you would share on that?
I think the only thing that comes to my mind is, I'm sure you all heard about the derailment in East Palestine.
In Ohio, right?
Yes, in Ohio, and that the pollutant that was being carried on there was vinyl chloride, and that is what they had to burn off. vinyl chloride is used in making PVC piping, which is a plastic. And there are alternatives to vinyl chloride. I don't know that much about them, but I know that there are alternatives. So I think there is going to be even more of a push to reduce the vinyl chloride use because it is the most transported chemical in the United States at this point. So that's just one example. I agree with you 100%. I think we can reduce the different types of plastic, but we may have to do it one chemical at a time. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the kind of chemical, what is it, the American Chemical Council or something, the lobbying group that is all about making sure that people get their money, the people who already don't need any more money, get their more money. The American Chemistry Council, that's what it's called. Is a lobbying group that,
Well,
Yeah.
one of the problems there is we don't use their products directly. We
correct,
only use the products indirectly, and because of that, we're unaware of all the different products that all the different chemicals that go into these products. And that's really tough.
yep, you're right. Dia, you have your hand up?
Yes. Thank you so much for this. I'm so encouraged by the advocacy that we'll be doing. But I agree that, right now, there's a lot of things we can do while we're working on these changes. We still have to continue to recycle, and we still have to continue to use our consumer power to choose as much as we can not to use plastics. I've been, my house is filled with things that needs to be recycled. It's like, it's disheartened me that everything is in plastic. One thing that I do is I chose shampoo bars and conditioner bars, and they are available, although I still have to get them from Amazon, the company that I don't like, but I finally found the one that I like. And also floss. There are floss alternative that is not plastic. Even
Dental
the
floss, you mean?
Yeah, dental floss. And then right now they also have electric toothbrush that are made of bamboo. At least you can change the head, and you can use reuse the battery component that's similar to Philips. Things like that we need to continue to be diligent to looking for alternative. And Sister Marian, I make beeswax wrap.
Oh, Dia makes beeswax wraps. I didn't know that.
So
Good to know.
yeah, so thank you so much for this. I'm so encouraged that we're doing this.
Thank you, Dia.
And I think as we go forward, it's going to be important. It would be very helpful to know some high priority things, because we could go crazy and not make much impact. But let's say if all of us and all of our contacts identified 2 or 3 really high impact issues, we could zero in on that, and of course do the others as much as we can. But this is a big field, and we want to work smart,
Yep, you're right.
I wonder if Kim, if our speaker, would have any thought about what is the most high impact action we could take as a corporate group.
I would have said that your plan to work on banning plastic bags at the state level is an extremely good impact. If you can get your area interested in doing that, and then combine with other areas in your other legislators around you, I think you're going to make a huge impact. I mean, I think that would be really large.
Regina?
I just saw a story this morning on a couple, I think it was in Florida, who started out small, and now they have thousands of people who donate glass bottles. They said sand is the one of the biggest resources we use, natural resources we use, and that we're getting low. So they are collecting bottles and turning it into sand-like material. I thought that was very interesting.
I believe sand is used in making cement. And so just imagine how much sand we need if we're gonna make cement. Unfortunately, cement releases carbon dioxide as well to the environment, unfortunately.
They were talking too about helping with the barrier with it was Louisiana with the storms affecting their coast, that they were using that on
Build up their coastlines.
build up the coastline. Yeah.
Yeah, I read that as well. Okay, well, I want to respect everyone's time. This is a great conversation. I'm happy to stay on as well, but we did promise an hour. So if you need to go, I certainly understand that. If anyone else has other questions or comments they would like to make, we're happy to stay and listen. So feel free to unmute and join the conversation if that is something you're interested in. If not, you're free to go. Although I would like to close with a little prayer of thanksgiving for bringing us together and having the wherewithal to follow through on the things that we want to do. So we're gonna depend on the Lord's providence to have that conviction. So thank you all so much, and I really appreciate you being on with us, and we will continue walking forward in this journey together.
Thank you,
Thank
Teresa.
you. Thank you, Kim.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Thank you, Kim.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.